Welcome to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. It is your boy, Chad Wilson, your guy, Amo Calamino, and we're getting down to the super nitty gritty Super Bowl, whatever is coming up. What Super Bowl are we on, Amo? Which one are we on?
58, right?
58. I knew he would know. I have no
58.
no idea. I stopped counting the Roman numerals when they got really big. But we're getting down to the end in the NFL, so that's going to be a big majority, if not all, of our show today. We had last week's games to talk about. They're still hiring and firing coaches and parting of ways in the NFL. I'm going to get on my soapbox, I think, a little bit about that issue and topic, as there is another significant coaching change that has been made, not head coach, but coordinator wise, as we do that dance. We'll get into that. Plus, we will talk about what Emil and I think about the two games that are coming up, i.e. our picks. We weren't the greatest last week, but we're allowed. We're allowed to slip up here. We're allowed to pull a hamstring on this race to winners that we've had each and every week. And we definitely have some separation. We've got some ground there for
so far in the playoffs, we're 500. We're 6-6. I mean, I don't know.
We are. It's tough, guys. You know, you don't just get to pick.
By the way, I'm going to give you a cheat code for you and the listeners of how you can always remember the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Anchor January 1967 in your mind. So that's simple. 1967. Just anchor that. So that was the first Super Bowl. So whatever year it is, you subtract, right? So we're on 2024, right? So that would be 57 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you add one because the first game was played in January 67. So you got +1. So it's whatever the difference is in the year from 1967, add one. So next year, it'll be 58 +1, it'll be 59.
I think we could
run all the way with January 67. That's it.
Good, man. So that's how we did that. You guys,
I did it.
You numbers guys and your tricks. All right, Emil, let's jump into this really quick. News breaking within the hour, a couple of hours here. The Miami Dolphins and Vic Fangio, their defensive coordinator, are parting ways. So they will be, for the third year of Mike McDaniel's tenure, a third defensive coordinator. And man, Emil, I'm over all these coaching changes. You know who's most affected in this stuff? It's the players. You cannot get any continuity whatsoever as a player, both at the NFL or the college football level. There's just a constant, and people talk about getting out of your comfort level. No one can get comfortable at all. And
let me ask you this. Do you know anything? Because I sent you a text. Fangio's a local guy from up here, went to my high school. He's older than me, obviously, but I said, wow, they let him go. And then I started looking for, like that. It didn't really make sense to me. It's not like the Dolphins had a bad year defensively.
It's been described, and there seems to be an intense desire to make this known that it was a mutual parting of ways, not McDaniel saying, hey, you're out. We didn't like what you did this year. It was Fangio wanting to pursue something else, whatever that may be. And it seems like it would make sense for it to be Philadelphia, since there's an opening and he's from up that way. And McDaniel's not being blown away. Okay. And then there's a guy available.
He's from northeastern Pennsylvania. So literally where I grew up is 20 miles north of where I am right now. I can be on a good day with my heavy foot, I can get down the turnpike and be in the parking lot in Philadelphia in an hour 50. So I think, it might make this story I might actually believe. You know what I'm saying? It sounds logical.
Sure. And I do wonder why they didn't just make that move last year. I know he came in towards the end of the year and was some type of a consultant. I guess they didn't know they would lose Jonathan Gannon like that. And Fangio had since moved on and, got with the Dolphins. And then Gannon, was selected or made his choice to go be the Cardinals head coach. Seems a little weird, but however, from the Dolphins side, where things might seem a little bit, more murky, who's going to be your defensive coordinator? And I've heard the name Brandon Staley thrown out there. And so, here's a couple of young guys, maybe a little bit like-minded, so to speak. We don't love Brandon Staley as a head coach
as
because
a head coach, but he can't go for as a defensive coordinator. So I might, maybe he's okay there.
right, they could always just shut his microphone off if he starts with any of that nonsense during a game. And for all intents and purposes, in his time with the Los Angeles Rams, he did do well as a defensive coordinator. Now, I will say he had not had that job long enough to experience some adversity and see how he handles it, but that's not even something that we do anymore. Because the moment a guy is good, we go elevating him depending on who you are.
Let me shock you. Let me shock you. Since we're we're going to be talking coaching here for a while because it's we're getting close to the off season. We only got 2 games that we're going to talk about this week, so
Right.
it seems like a lot of our topics are coaching and changes this week. I'm going to shock you. After I took a step back, I do this, and I removed my fan hat and I let the shock of the Cowboys season coming crashing down.
Mm.
I actually have to defend Jerry Jones in this case. I'm okay with bringing McCarthy back, and I'm going to tell you why. When I looked at it, I said, okay, you just made a point in this segment about coaching changes. That's all we get. We get coaching changes. So I sat back and said, who have been two of the more successful franchises in the last couple decades where this has been a phenomenon? The Steelers, right? Mm-hmm. Steelers have had 3 head coaches since 1970 or something like that. Right. Chuck Noll, mm-hmm. Bill Cowher, mm-hmm. Mike Tomlin. Now, there's listeners up my way are going to say, hey, well, the Steelers haven't won a playoff game. I think it's since 2016. Yeah. Whatever. Part of that is talent. I don't know if I'm a big defender of Tomlin because I say you look at the Steelers rosters, should they be winning playoff games? I mean, just getting there, I thought this year was a hell of a job. Okay.
Yes. What an accomplishment.
So, okay. And then I look at the other organization, the Baltimore Ravens. And for my money, right now, the best organization in professional football is the Ravens. Mm-hmm. They're in the mix every year. They've won a couple Super Bowls. They seem to always field a winning program. How many coaches have they had? 2?
Yeah.
Right? Brian Billick and Harbaugh. I can't think. Am I missing anybody?
No, I don't think so.
So, okay.
They didn't leave a mark.
So, I'm on a little tangent, but what I'm trying to say is, I looked at my team situation and I said, okay, you fire McCarthy. Now he's won 12 games 3 years in a row. No matter what people say, I guarantee you can't win the Super Bowl unless you make the playoffs. We agree?
Oh, yeah. It would seem that that's how this thing is set up.
Seems how it works. And winning 12 games in today's NFL is no small feat because there's a ton of parity.
Right.
So he's got part of the equation down pat. And you can say, yeah, he's had 3 disappointing playoff losses. But really, 2 of them, I thought the 49ers, in retrospect, were a better team. I think this year was the only loss I'd categorize as a bad loss. You were home. You should have probably won. You had better players.
Sure.
So where do you go? Like a lot of these teams, I guess what I'm getting at is if you're going to get rid of a coach, you better be sure as hell whoever you bring in is a slam dunk better.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that because I did have that thought during the week. Like, hey, I'm glad that Jerry Jones acted his age, which is, at that age, you should have some stability and not be swayed so much by the general public. And I am glad I'm not a Cowboys fan per se, but I'm just happy to see something like that. The man, like you said, did win 12 games, 3 years in a row. Let's get some continuity for those players. Let's get some stability, though it seems you might lose Dan Quinn, maybe not. How great would it be for those Cowboys guys to have that same head coach and get Dan Quinn back and really, really get comfortable in that system? And listen, man, sometimes you knock
I'm okay with Al Harris. I'd like to see Al Harris get promoted if Quinn leaves. I'm fine with that.
Sure, and if he's going to be, something pretty close to what it was they had. I think that's important. Having played ball myself, but watched my 2 sons go through it, the coaching changes can be they can be a big deal. It's learning something completely new, a new system.
I guess you triggered something in me when you just said that because I was thinking about it this week and I really hadn't talked to you about it, just shooting back and forth. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm looking at Bill Belichick. And there doesn't seem to be a line forming for Bill Belichick. And now, first of all, don't misunderstand. I have a ton of respect for everything Bill Belichick's done. And I said on our show that I think when people try to separate Belichick and Brady, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
They each needed each other. And, people will point to Brady going to Tampa and winning that year. Yeah, that was nice. And they had their cap set up and things worked out. But I'm not sure there is a Tom Brady without a Bill Belichick and vice versa. But that being said, two things being true at once, Bill Belichick without Tom Brady as his quarterback overall in the NFL is 29-38.
Yeah, there's no way around that. And what's unfair to Belichick is we didn't really have any extended period of time with Tom Brady outside of Belichick. Yes, he did get that Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. I just have the feeling that things weren't going to continue to go that way in Tampa Bay. We didn't have a situation where there was a Tom Brady before the Patriots. He came into the league with the Patriots. So we don't have a situation where he spent 4 or 5 years on maybe a franchise that was not well run or whatever, or Cleveland at the time, to say, oh man, he wasn't really all that. So we don't have that situation. Moving on to Belichick, though, we had a pre-show discussion and we're wondering why Belichick hasn't landed somewhere. And Emil, I have to think that it is, he's on his second or third interview or discussion with the Atlanta Falcons, who really right now seem to be the only team hardcore interested in doing that. And I think a lot of it has to do with what he requires now at this point in his career, with so many years under his belt and a great deal of amount of success, and what he's been used to. And I think that's probably what's going on. Bill wanting more control over what's put on that field and what's given to him on a roster, versus the Falcons do have to think beyond Bill Belichick, because it's not like he's going to be there for a decade.
I mean, are you familiar with the dynamics around Atlanta sports? And what I mean by that is people don't understand. You remember back in the days, now the Braves are good again, but when they won the 15 division titles in a row.
Sure.
So you turn on a Braves National League Championship Series game and the stadium would be full.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And only because I do some business down in that part of the country, I can tell you Atlanta is a weird city in that over time, downtown Atlanta is urban with a lot of offices for corporate headquarters. So you have your people that are hardcore Atlanta, but it's not a lot. And then you got the suburbs around there, which are some really wealthy suburbs with people who've been transferred to Atlanta. And they bring their loyalties to their team. So it's you could be in Atlanta, you'll find Cleveland Browns fans, Dallas Cowboy fans.
Sure.
And what I'm getting at is I think he fits there because he might bring some juice to the Falcons. You know what I mean? Like might draw some interest to them.
Right.
And I don't really see him I mean, I could see a guy like Arthur Blank saying, yeah, you can have the keys to the condominium. You can do everything here, Bill.
Yeah, but then why hasn't it happened yet? If that's how he thinks, why hasn't it happened?
Because I think deep down, what everybody knows is this is not long-term for Belichick. He's got all the awards he needs. He's 71 years old. He probably wants to just prove to the world, I can do it without Brady. And how long is he going to do that for? How long is that?
They also be chasing that all-time wins record.
Right. So, that's what, 2 more years, 3 years if he does well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just don't think there's an appetite. If you're trying to build something, do you really want, like you always said with Miami Hurricanes job, it became, you didn't want it to become a retirement community job. Like when Mark Richt went there.
Yeah.
I was like, hey.
That was my immediate fear. He'll keep driving by the water and the boats. And when things get thick, I don't need this.
Yeah, this is fun. I have the money. I'll get a boat and go fishing.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't have to deal with this now.
So, I mean, my concern, I think other owners are looking and going, if I want to build something, yeah, he's an all-time great, but he's done all the winning he needs to do. How much is that fire burning?
Right. And I can't think of another coach. I mean, Jimmy Johnson tried it with the Dolphins, but another legendary coach that did that. You know, Walsh left the game with the
The
49ers.
only guy I'll give him credit, give some credit where credit is due. The only guy that had some good success on a second or third act, I think, was Parcells. You know, he won with the Giants twice. He People don't realize, younger listeners, I mean, the Patriots were really bad. I mean,
Mhm.
pre-Belichick, when the year I think they took Curtis Martin, they were horrible.
Right.
And you know, within a short order, he had them back. Now they lost the Super Bowl, but he had them back in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's just not a normal thing to see happen. And maybe it's different for Bill. Maybe he'll get another gig. It's kind of Atlanta or nothing, don't you think, at this point?
I don't see. I don't think he's going. You know, again, first of all, I think we have too many openings every year. Generally speaking, the NFL turns over 25% of its head coaches every year. And, you know, another team, you know, we were talking in the leading up to the end of the year, everybody wondered, Eberflus, is that how you say his name? The
Yes.
Chicago coach. Is he going to get fired? And
Mhm.
I'm thinking, for what?
They finished
Fired
out
for
strong, you know?
How's he gonna fired for what? His quarterback was hurt a chunk of the season. When he got him back, they played pretty good offensive football. They need pieces on offense. They were competitive when they had their starting quarterback. What do you want to fire him for? I mean, how many coaches can you fire?
And to get who, as you always say.
Again, that's what, you know, if you really want to have a conversation with a fan, and you got to start with, and I do this to myself to check myself when I get carried away, is okay, then who?
Right.
Here,
Give me a name. He'll say
give me a
something
name.
absurd.
Because everybody thinks it's, you know, don't get me wrong, I get it. You know, coaching's important and getting the guys ready to play. But these are professional football players, okay?
Right.
What I will kill a coach more for is time management, situational things, right? Like my thing, what frustrates me on my team, McCarthy, managing the clock. He does some goofy things at the end of halves and games.
Mhm.
But like, is it his fault that his team wasn't ready for prime time? He won 12 games. He had them ready most weeks. So
Yeah,
my point,
something silly happened there, Emil. It just did not seem like the
well,
Cowboys.
you said all along you thought defensively it was Quinn looking for jobs, and that could be something. But you know,
Could
again,
be. There's a lot of preparation that
it's
goes
it
into
just it's
that.
you see that stuff happen in sports, and what I always say is, at some point, the players have to be accountable.
Right.
Big time, you know, what's that say? Big time players make big plays in big
Yeah,
games.
sure,
So
sure. I think it's there's a mixture of both there. I mean, you do need a game plan. If we don't want to call it that, then, shoot, why do we talk about Lombardi? Why do we talk about Reed? Why do we talk about
100%,
all
and
these?
that's in a close game. Game plans to me are where you get in any game. If you're out executed or out, if it's strategic, fine. When you come out and it's a flat tire like that, I just don't know how much you can blame the coach. If it happened 8 out of 10 weeks, sure, you'd say, well, the coach obviously has lost the locker room. But if it's a one-time thing, sometimes the moment, not everybody's built, like Derek Jeter would say,
Yeah.
not everybody's built for the big moments.
No, that's true. There's only a handful of Jordans and Kobe's and guys of that nature, and the Derek Jeters of the world. Speaking of coaching changes, potential coaching changes, Emil, if he's head faking us, this has to be one of the most elite of head fakes, with Jim Harbaugh right now going for second and third interviews and hardcore. It doesn't even seem like rumors anymore about him and the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, we've seen this with him before where he flirts with the league and then ends up coming back. But this time he's going pretty hard. What do you do if you're Michigan right now in terms of recruiting? Because we're still in that season and you're still trying to
I
get
think he knows something about that kid that allegedly went rogue with the disguise on the
the
sideline.
Facebook glasses.
Yeah, because the NCAA rule says that even if Harbaugh was unaware of it and didn't direct it, if it's proven to be whatever they call their highest violations, it's still the coach's responsibility. And if it's a coach's responsibility, he can then be fired for cause. And I think that's a hang up in the language. And I'm starting to believe more and more he's going to end up in the NFL just because I don't think he wants to deal with it.
Yeah. Man, we didn't talk about this last week, but I'm super annoyed with the NCAA. Doesn't take much. I've been annoyed with them for probably the entirety of my life since I understood what they do or what they don't do. But the recent, uh, I guess the words are attacks, but causes of action brought against Florida State of all people.
Yeah.
And then now they're going after Florida for Jaden Rashada. And it's okay. What are you guys doing there? You just picking and choosing? Is there there's a whole SEC conference there I know stuff. Okay. And I would not call myself an insider, but I know things that have been done that are tampering, which is going and offering kids money, NIL money that are on other teams' rosters. This happens. I know it happens. And you guys you don't see that. And
Yeah.
suddenly you're on Florida State's head because they made a little noise about the way things went at the end of the year. You just look like the mob. You look like a rogue organization running.
They are the mob.
It's
No, they are the mob.
It's
Listen,
crap.
it seems like retribution to me. It's like Florida State, pointed out very loudly the flaws in your 4-team system and the joke that it was, hey, we played a Power 5 schedule, we won all our games, and now you're going to decide like we're playing gymnastics here.
They also made hard overtures to depart the ACC. I guess they're not supposed to do that. Everyone can leave the conference, not these guys.
Get back in line, okay, and pay the boss.
I'm never going to be one to be like, oh, man, I feel sorry for Florida State or Florida. But golly, come on, man. Like, what are you guys doing? You've looked the other way.
It's never their rainmakers they go after anymore. They finally figured it out after our schools, our teams, Miami and USC unjustly took a hit.
Right.
And now they finally figure out, hey, probably wasn't real good to do that for our bottom line. They don't go after Alabama.
It's unbelievable. Yeah,
they don't go after Georgia. They don't go after Ohio State.
No, they won't cut their arm off. So
no.
Should the organization directly benefiting monetarily from the activity be the one policing it? It seems really stupid to me. But yeah, that whole listen, if you want to get in here hardcore NCAA and start doing investigations, and you want to start handing out penalties and taking away scholarships and keeping people off of TV, how about you come up with some serious, stringent, strict, clear rules on what can and can't be done with NIL, and let's come up with some common sense rules for the portal so that at least there's something out there that can look like structure before you guys go handing out.
The savior of college football is the Deep South because of the tradition and history and the way you guys treat it down there. They can get away with some stuff because Nick saw the writing on the wall. The minor league football comment basically told you what Nick was thinking.
Sure.
And it's essentially, it really has, it's devolved to that. I've said it time and time again. Every day I see a new thing pop on my Bleacher Report. What is CJ Stroud's giving a big chunk of money to the NIL initiative.
The money grab. And again, this is going to sound like I'm not for the players getting money. I am. I just don't like the wild, wild west, untamed nature of it. It seems absurd, ridiculous, and I don't even want to say with the potential to get out of hand because I think we're already there. We need some structure in place, NCAA, before you go investigating people and handing out penalties. Let's lay down some structure, like wake up, be a dad. Don't be a dad that just has stuff going on, all kind of crazy. And then one day you just walk in the door, you start grounding people and pulling out the belt and hitting folks. This is what it looks like. You've let the kids eat ice cream for breakfast. You've let them put crayons to the wall. You've let them stuff the toilet. You've let the dog shit on the couch. And then suddenly you're going to come in here now because someone put an empty carton in the refrigerator. Now you're going AWOL. You're going AWOL.
It's a good analogy. But I mean, we went from an era where we had all kind of crazy rules, right? Kids home in the dorm, Thanksgiving, can't afford a plane ticket home.
Yeah,
Ah,
right.
did you give him a Christmas gift early at Thanksgiving dinner?
Did that
Oh,
kid get a free sandwich over
oh my
there at
God.
Sal's?
We went from that to rules. Who needs any stinking
Right.
rules?
Kid's pulling up to his announcement in a Lamborghini. Yeah. Thanks, NCAA. Thanks for nothing and then something at the same time. Let's talk about what happened on the field last week in these games. And, we could mix our picks in there as well.
Well, we had four of them, right? Let's just go in order, beginning to end. First game of the weekend was that Ravens Texans game. And I have to admit, more so than you, I know you liked the Texans in that game. I didn't pick the game on the show. I did like the Ravens.
Mhm.
At halftime, I was surprised. The Texans were hanging around, and I was like, hey, Chad might be onto something here. The punt return obviously was a huge play. And it was 10-10 at the half. Second half, what did you see? Would you think the Ravens just figured out
No, it's
defensively?
funny, Emil. You felt that way about a game you didn't pick, and the team you would have picked ended up winning. I had the team that eventually lost and didn't cover the number, but by halftime, I felt like Houston was in trouble. Your only way of scoring was that punt return. You're really a team that feeds off of what goes on offensively, and you couldn't really find your way there. And I thought they would do more off. I thought they would look a little differently offensively, and it wasn't happening. And I realized that's going to work against them in the second half. It's a playoff game. You're on the road. The crowd's going to be against you. You're not hot offensively, so it's going to get colder.
Yeah.
And if you continue to have these stall drives and inability to move, you're going to get avalanched. They're going to start. Baltimore will get control of the game. They will knock off runs, whether it's Gus Edwards or it's Lamar Jackson. They'll start hitting throws over the middle. And then if you fall behind, you start getting sacked. The pass rush will be too much. Balls get popped up in the air. I've seen enough playoff football to know, and I didn't feel good with a tie score at halftime with them on the road. If they're in Houston, I'd have been like, hey, okay. Even if you're an underdog at home, and we felt like the Ravens were a better team. If it's 10-10 in Houston, okay. 10-10 in Baltimore and your only score was a punt return, I didn't feel good. And it played out that way.
The mistake that, and I'm not here to piss on Houston season because they went from 3 wins to, whatever it was.
You can't be unhappy as a Texan.
Can't be unhappy. But the most talking heads and announcers on these games make mistakes as the game's ending, they assume here's Houston. They did this. Well, God, they got to go up here. And what they forget about the NFL or in any sport for that matter is a couple of things. Houston had the benefit last year of grabbing 2 top 10 picks. That's over. Okay. Because when you start winning, obviously you go backwards in the draft. Mm-hmm. Second thing is your schedule gets harder. And you see that a lot of times with baseball teams. Like you're a Yankee fan, the Orioles, a great year. I don't know if the Orioles are going to do that again. They they drafted in the top 5 years in a row or something like that. So, I mean, do I think Houston should improve? Sure, but they've got areas. They're going to have a harder schedule next year. We'll see. I mean,
what did you see game-wise there? Like, why didn't it happen for them, in your opinion?
Well, I just don't think they had the horses. CJ Stroud had a great year. He's, going to be rookie of the year. Their number 2 receiver's been out. Tank Dell's been out, right?
It sure would have helped to have that.
Would have helped. Dalton Schultz, the old cowboy, dropped a couple key passes early in that game.
Yeah, he turned into a pumpkin a little bit.
He turned into a pumpkin.
You're allowed to have a booger,
again,
but
that Baltimore defense is really solid, especially by today's standards. I mean, they get a little soft sometimes in coverage, but you can't run the ball on them. Mm-hmm. It's a good defense.
Yeah, I agree.
To me, it was just they have better players. To make it simple.
No doubt. And we had the same kind of story in the second game with the Packers and the 49ers, except I felt differently in that game at halftime because what was our score at halftime? Close, very close.
Yeah, it was tight. I forget the exact score.
I felt better about what was going on with the Packers. They're moving the football. And they seem like they're going to have opportunities to get in that end zone in the second half. And then on top of that, Brock Purdy wasn't on his game. We can go on and on about what kind of quarterback people think he is. I've heard that whole BS going on the whole week. He's a solid quarterback. He's a good quarterback.
Yeah, he's a good
He's out
quarterback.
there. So, get over yourselves. He just wasn't on point, and I just felt like the Packers were going to be able to hang around in that.
There's in this game, I swear I was going to pick up the phone and call you, because if I see this again, and I will this weekend, these guys early in that game, it might have been the second quarter, the Packers were down around the 10 or 12-yard line, 4th and 3. It might have even been the first quarter. Can we just kick the field goal? There's nothing wrong with scoring. Seriously.
The story has always been early in the game, you take points. Unless you're going up against a King Kong offense, field goals aren't going to get it done today. But take the points, like continuously put pressure on.
And the other thing is, you never, and I know we've talked about this, fans have trouble. They'll say, well, if Green Bay took those 3 points, the game would have been tied and went overtime. Well, we don't know that, because the game would have been played differently from that point forward. Sure. But what I do know is there's nothing wrong in the first half of a game. I mean, if it was 4th and half a yard, maybe 4th and 2 or 3, kick the freaking field goal. You don't know how the game's going to play out. You might need those points at the end of the game. It's early. There's no reason. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah. I've been impressed with how the Packers closed out the year. Beginning, middle of the year, Emil, you remember, I'd made a couple picks with them, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what the deal is there. Impressive the way they closed out. I don't understand what spirit animal got up in Jordan Love on that final play. I think Brett Favre grabbed his PS2 controller and jumped inside of him, because I don't understand a crossbody throw to where 3 defenders were. I don't understand that when you just needed to get in the field goal range. But outside of that, Emil, they had a great year. Good job offensively, and you got to see the genius of Matt LaFleur. And it just makes me wonder what was going on there with Aaron Rodgers. Was he the problem?
He might have been. I mean, listen, there's some risk. Green Bay's in an odd position, right? They're probably going to hand Jordan Love. No, not probably. They're going to hand Jordan Love a lot of money.
Unless he has a disaster of a next season.
No, I think in this offseason, they're going to do an extension with him.
Really?
I do. And we know there's a risk with paying a guy off one season. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying, don't misunderstand.
We do it all the time in this league, but yes.
I'm not saying Jordan Love isn't going to be really good. I think he will, but I don't know that. He had a weird season in that the first half of the year, he was throwing a lot of picks. Then all of a sudden he got hot as hell. Mm-hmm. I think he was 18 touchdowns, 1 pick for 7 or 8 games.
Any way you slice it, that's pretty damn impressive.
Yes, and then he threw a couple in this game. He has some things he gets away with because he's got a strong arm. He makes some throws off weird platforms into windows. There's going to be film on him. All I'm saying is I've seen guys that you have too, where they do that, and some keep going, they keep getting better, and they become Patrick Mahomes. And some, it's like, that was a mirage. The league figured it out.
What did I talk about during the year with all these backups that came in? That third start, guys, turn into a pumpkin. My favorite saying.
No, I'm not. Listen, I think you're probably right. There's probably something with Aaron Rodgers there that wasn't.
I think he brought unnecessary friction there, thinking he was smarter than what it was the coach was trying to do. And that was a really big disconnect. You think there's a part of Devontae Adams that's like, probably should have stayed in Green Bay. Would have been nice to be with this guy.
I mean, sometimes you got to stay with the organization. You can't just follow.
Sure.
You got to trust the organization. Now, the thing I didn't understand, the Packers being a good organization, they rebuilt a nice offensive line. All year, the kicker was a problem, and they never addressed it. I mean, they just kind of.
How these playoffs work. That whatever that thing was that nagged at you is going to show up in the postseason.
Well, especially kickers. Kickers are going to decide I don't care how dominant your team is. If you're in the postseason for 3 to 4 games, there's going to be a game where your kicker is vital in you winning.
Yeah, he's on front and center. You got to show up or we're dead. And yeah, it it popped off that way.
Yeah, but that was a good pick you had. I mean, I have to say,
I
Packers
really
hung
felt like
in
one of
there.
those were going to hit. I just felt like that. I
I
wasn't sure
will
to say,
say
hey, I'm going
this,
to
and
go 2-0. I figured I'd split it and
you're. Let me ask you this, and the old school part of me says you want the bye, but I'm starting to wonder with the way the playoffs are structured and only the top two teams getting a bye. I'm not sure it's an advantage unless you're totally beat up. Like, I mean, maybe if you got a year where you had guys with tons of nagging injuries and that week helps you, because here's the way I see that now. Most of the teams that get the bye already have it secured by week 18, the final week of the season, okay? So they either don't play their starters or only play them a quarter. So essentially, you got a team that didn't play that week. Then they get a week off. Then they come play. So they're basically 3 weeks between really playing meaningful football. And I'm starting to wonder if that isn't
a
the
disadvantage.
yes, because I mean the
I'm
49ers did
gonna have to
not look
dig in.
sharp.
I'm gonna have to dig into that. I would counter with, okay, the bye does also come with home field advantage throughout, but is home field as advantageous as it has been in the past? Because hey, listen, I heard a story where, God, I forget who the analyst is from ESPN that talks the basketball guy. It'll come to my mind. But he says, and he played in the 90s, and he said, listen, when I first got on and I was with Golden State, we traveled commercial. These guys travel so well now. They stay in the greatest places. I don't want to use the word pampered, but it's so much different now, the terms of the travel. Yeah, there's the crowd noise if for your
Mm.
offense, but everything else, it's not as difficult as it has been in the past. And like you said, you're laying off for quite some time, and then to try and reheat, you
I
know.
mean, even to a certain extent, the Ravens weren't sharp the first half offensively.
No, they weren't. And they
No,
weren't,
their defense carried the day. So what I'm
yeah, they
getting
weren't as
at is,
dominant as they'd been in certain games, like
yeah.
for instance, the San
I mean,
Francisco.
I know it's crazy to fans, but I'm starting to really question how much of an advantage it is because I think there's only you and I could probably do this someday, but off the top of our head, I'd say there's five, six venues where I'd say there's a true home field advantage. Denver because of the altitude, Kansas City because of the weather and the crowd, Green Bay because of the weather and the crowd. You know, we could go through a couple.
I'd venture to say Buffalo, if they're not playing Kansas City, is a
Buffalo, and maybe if you want to throw in a Seattle because it's unusually the way it's built,
yeah.
Seattle's usually loud. So maybe there's five or six venues, right? But honestly, like I'm not sure there's a huge home field advantage, even though Dallas plays well there. I don't think there's a huge home field advantage there.
Yeah, I
I
would.
don't think the Rams have a huge home field
Oh
advantage. They got
no, no, they might have the least of any team out there. Sliding to the Sunday games, I mean, I gotta tell you, as this thing's going back and forth with Detroit and Tampa early on, I'm thoroughly impressed with a 9-8 Tampa team that I had doing zero this year.
yeah.
I had them nowhere near the playoffs, that they won a first round game and didn't get their heads blown off early and often. They didn't get completely erased off the field. Um, I'm totally impressed with that. I mean, we could call it a good job by Todd Bowles. We'll talk about what the hell he was doing at the end of the game there in a
Well, they
minute.
were there all afternoon. It wasn't just early.
Yeah, or is it just the galvanizing, I'm one of the boys nature of Baker Mayfield? Whatever it was, I was impressed by it. Maybe you chalk it up to Detroit just being really green when it comes to playoff games, but they played well. Detroit was playing a good game and Tampa was right there with them. So I was impressed by that. Ultimately, Detroit got the win, the cover, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm impressed by Tampa Bay. So a moral victory there. Amon, we got to talk about. I'm so sick of seeing this. I'm so sick of the end of the game clock management. What do you guys look? Do you guys
Well,
not
what I
look at
didn't
this?
understand was his logic because he took a
Why
timeout.
delay the inevitable is what he's what? He's
Yeah,
talking. There's a punt, a kick. There was another action that needed to be taken there
yeah.
where anything could happen. Todd Bowles, maybe you want to rethink that.
He
Maybe
took a timeout home with him, and here's the thing: like, if for fans, if he took the timeout, Detroit would have been left with the decision to
field
either
goal, punt, something.
A, try a long field goal, which I doubt they would have done because we know field goals get blocked. That would have iced the game. But to my point, if they tried it, it could have been blocked and returned. They would have had a punt. Sure, 995 out of 1,000 snaps in the NFL are probably
You
perfect.
just need one to go awry.
We just need one over the punter's head.
And in a pressured moment,
Yes. So, I mean, like, why would you not try to exhaust your, it's a one-score game. Exhaust every opportunity.
dude, I'm calling timeouts when you're taking a knee because
Yes.
it's the end of the season. All right. I am going to do everything that I can. Maybe you've got a Jameis Winston on your team that might try to hand a ball off to somebody and Joe Pisarcik that thing for our older audience.
Right.
And you pick it up and run it in. Like, you don't get to frame that timeout and hang it on your wall when you get home.
No.
Todd Bowles, I don't know.
But anyway, he did,
Great season, though.
we roasted him for a while, but he did a hell of a coaching job because, Tampa Bay, Mayfield is a gunslinger, and they have Mike Evans, who seems to get butterfingers recently. He's been dropping a lot of balls, but a good receiver. But there's not a ton to work with this year coming in. It was supposed to be a reset year for them, and to be in the playoffs and actually win a playoff game, pretty good.
Yeah, they're an interesting team this offseason between the draft and free agency. If they can add some key pieces in a division where there's nothing there to be afraid of, you've got a coach that was fired. You've got another coach that was fired. And then you got another coach who we all thought was going to get fired. Yeah, like,
well,
hey.
that's the theme of the show. I think coaching, that's why coaching, this stuff you're talking about is why coaching continuity is underrated. If you go into an off season and you keep continuity, assuming you're having some success, obviously, if you're the LA Chargers, you don't want continuity, you want upheaval.
Get this.
But if you're having some success, you go into the free agency and the draft knowing where you need to improve, knowing the system you're running,
right?
Knowing who you need to target to improve. If you change for the sake of changing and you've had some success, like a Tampa even, you just change your coach. Well, okay, now you go to free agency, you got a whole new system. Yeah, so now I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how the guys are going to mesh together. What do I need to add? I'm not sure because I'm running an entire different.
Right. Can the quarterback here run the offense? Will this receiver be good? Can this defensive end pass rush, or we're going to ask him to stand up and drop in coverage now? All these things come into question. So there's something to be said for that. Finally, another episode in the trilogy, the saga that is Buffalo, Kansas City, and man, I feel for the city of Buffalo, for the organization. They
invent ways. I never saw an organization, that invents ways to break the heart of a loyal fan base like the Bills.
Did you see the guy at the end that just fell into his chair and broke into tears?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, that guy went through the 90s. He went through the 90s with the Bills.
Here's the way I look at the Bills. This coming from a Cowboys fan that recently has suffered some of these indignities. I got to see 5 Super Bowls, okay? Right. I got to see my team go to 8 of them.
Right.
The Bills literally
they saw 4 Super Bowls.
They lost them all, okay? And then they're in position to win these games like a couple of years ago. Fans will remember. All they have to do, 13 seconds.
Right.
13 seconds. Yeah. And he squib kicks it. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, the Chiefs are on the 35-yard line.
We talked about, some of them, but, you make a bad coaching decision in games like this. That'll happen. But the way that they just so work out in the worst way every time McDermott makes a bad decision, it's like it just.
Well, what was the one? Wasn't it the Titans in '99? They threw the ball backwards on the kickoff and returned it to win the game. They invented ways
they have
to lose playoff games. This kid, that was not a long field goal. And as I texted you during the game, at some point the refs needed to involve themselves. The game was going along nicely. And then next thing you know, it's like, maybe we need a pass interference here on a bullshit call. Okay.
Have you enjoyed? I have enjoyed the memes on Twitter, having to do with the referees in Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, I like when they have them in the huddle with Mo. I mean,
I saw a really good one today, and it had referees with the black stripes replaced with red candy stripes, and said the referees, if the Chiefs make it to the Super Bowl. Fans are so over.
but I mean,
Really
during the game, I texted you. I said, "Here we go."
Yeah. They're hell bent on not seeing Taylor Swift in Super Bowl 58. But man, that brings us to, we got to pick a couple games here. These conference championships are here, and we are here to pick them. And we got to get to it. Or
Let's
quick
start.
recap
First
if you
game,
want.
Here, let me give you the line. First game,
Yes.
we have the Ravens at home, 3 and a hook to Taylor Swifties.
All right, I'm going to go here first. You know, when we get down to the playoffs, Emil and I do talk pre-show about who we want. And I told him it's going to be a game time decision. And it really has come down to that. I was going back and forth as we do this show with who I'm going to take. And after talking about the games that were played last week and some of the things throughout the season, I really just had to sit here and think and say, I don't want to get spooked by what the Chiefs did last week. It may just be a situation where you have the Bills' number. I'm really going to think about the team that the Chiefs were all year versus the team that the Ravens were all year. And the Ravens did not show a dent this year. Yeah, they lost a couple of games, sure. But when it was real and they needed to be there, they have shown up. Case in point, the San Francisco game in San Francisco. They have shown up when it has meant something. And we're not talking about the Bills. We are talking about the Baltimore Ravens. And while the team and their quarterback has never been to that show, the head coach has. He's been there. He knows what it looks like. Some of his assistants have, some of the people upstairs, people around the organization, the bus driver probably knows. And so there's not a organizational wide feel of we don't get past this point. They've been there. And I think the way they're playing ball this year, the way Lamar Jackson seems to be hell-bent on overcoming and doing it, and he's been a guy who's taken criticism, listened, and improved. And then at the end of the day, man, we're talking about a really good organization in the Baltimore Ravens. I know where my rooting interest was going to lie.
I think it's the best in the NFL, if you want me to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm right there.
I really do.
Yeah, from soup to nuts, man. They really are. And I knew where my rooting interest was going to lie, no matter what I picked. But I'm going to align my pick with my rooting interest, but not for that reason. This has been a solid team all year. I'm going to rely on the long. I'm going to look at the long and the big picture. Baltimore's been a good team all year. It's difficult to get where you need to go on that defense. Lamar's on point. And I'm noticing there's a lot of different guys he can get that ball to. Isaiah Likely, and the guys out on the edges, you can run the ball. There's different ways
and
now.
His style doesn't, I don't think, because of the way he kind of plays the position, and he's like a joystick, a human joystick. I'm not sure you really need that, receiver number one, like the Tyreek Hill or the CD Lamb. I'm not sure you need that.
He can put it. There's many
like a good
ways.
Point guard. He's out. He's distributing the basketball.
Yes, there's so many ways for them to get first downs.
Folks, you know what I need for this pick? See, that's called whiteout. Because prior to the show,
I was moving in Kansas City's direction, but man, I got it.
He came back to sanity.
I came back and thought about who Kansas City has been this year. Yeah, it's been a team without a real number one receiver. They've been a team that's dropped the football. There's been a team who at times have had a problem getting the football to Travis Kelce and have just looked off center. The defense has been solid all year, but now you're going up against something you really have not had a chance to look at, and that's Lamar Jackson with guys to distribute the football to, and that's going to be a really,
I
really
mean,
good
and let's
job.
be fair here. They won the first game against the Dolphins. I mean, my pick's the Ravens. I'll be full disclosure. The Chiefs won the first game against the Dolphins. That game was over when the Dolphins got off the plane.
Yeah, I mean, we could write
They
that.
wanted no part of, you could just see they were not prepared. The weather alone. And that's not to take anything away from the Chiefs. I'm just being honest with you.
Yeah.
And I really believe last week is just one of those things. It's like boxing matches. Sometimes certain fighters are a problem, even if the other guy theoretically is the better fighter. It's just, and I think the Bills are probably, you know, if they each played the same 17 teams, I think the Bills probably end up with a better record than the Chiefs.
The Chiefs has had 2 tailor-made games in these playoffs, I think.
And you know,
they're
I
running
think,
into something different.
and that's why I think you came back to your sanity on this one. I think the Ravens have shown all year that they've risen to the moment. And I think the Chiefs' lack of weapons on the outside in a game like this is going to be a problem because they're not going, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball on the Ravens the way they did at certain points last week against the Bills. I think the Ravens are going to shut that crap down immediately.
Yeah, now we got to throw the ball around.
Now we got to throw the ball to
Yeah.
guys that we don't trust.
Yeah, and I just keep going back to the Ravens and all what they have. Zay Flowers, there's Bateman. Odell could jump up in this game. Isaiah Likely, you got a running game.
The Ravens can beat you in all 3 phases.
Yeah.
They can beat you.
And they've got a return man.
Yeah. Right. And they have the best kicker in NFL history.
Yeah, and I think, yes, statistically and otherwise. Yes. I just think maybe the odds maker just tried to play with our heads and making them only 3 points. Because, you know, I get an idea of my head when these things come together. When the games were over last week, I don't want to see the line. I get an idea of what a line is going to be. And in my head, I said 5.5. It came out 3. I was like, oh, what?
3.5 for our purposes. We have to give.
Well, it's been moved to 3.5.
I will say this. I think in most games, the big advantage the Chiefs have is, you know, Andy Reid is one of the top 3 or 4, if not the top coach in the league. We can debate that, but he's definitely in the top 3 or 4.
Sure.
And most games they play, there is an advantage with Andy Reid. You know, I mean, not a shot at Sean McDermott. Andy Reid's a better football coach at this point than Sean McDermott.
Yes.
I can't say that this week. This is a guy that's in that conversation.
Well, he's going to meet his match. Emil, what do we say? I mean, obviously looking ahead, what do we say if the national champion is Jim Harbaugh and the Super Bowl champion is John Harbaugh? Like, if your dad, if you're the senior Harbaugh, what a moment.
The father's a funny guy. They had him on TV during the.
I mean, Jack is that guy. He's more Jim than John, by the way. But yeah, what a proud moment that would be for Jack Harbaugh if that happens. But anyway, I'm with you, man. I've got the Ravens.
We're both giving the Ravens -3.5. The second game, I'll be quick. I'll let you talk more. We're probably going to diverge unless you change. The line is 7, and I know there's talk. Deebo Samuel won't be 100% if he plays, and I get all that. But here's what I'm leaning on what I said in the first part of this show. Last week, I always feel this way. I'm a big football, baseball guy like you. I always worry about my team in baseball in that 5-game series, which has been, I'm a Dodger fan. That's been the bugaboo the last couple of years. Really good 100+ win teams getting beat by the Padres and D-backs, teams that were inferior to them all season. But they have those 4 or 5 days off the rust. And I worry about that series. I always say, get me by that series, and I feel really good. That's the way I feel about the 49ers. Last week, they had to knock some rust off. They sat around for 3 weeks. I felt like if somebody's going to catch them, maybe that's the week. I think the fans are looking, people picking games, not a shot at you if you go the other way, and saying, oh, I saw what the 49ers did last week, and the Lions are better than the Packers, and they have more firepower. But I think you're going to get a different version of the 49ers this week, a better version. And I also think the Lions' defense is going to be a problem here. Tampa Bay moved the ball well over 400 yards. They weren't garbage yards. They went up and down the field. And I think if the Lions have a couple Jared Goff moments early in the game where he throws a pick or something, this has the potential for a blowout. That's just the way I see it. I'm not going to overthink it. The 49ers, to me, were the better team all year.
I mean, there's some merit to what you're saying there, obviously. However, I just love I love the grittiness of the Lions. I love the way they have a never say die attitude. I love what they have going on there. And San Francisco at several times this year um, have looked very beatable.
Sure.
They had that 3-game stretch where they were missing Debo, I believe it was. Then whatever that was when the Ravens came into town and just totally smacked them around. And I think they're vulnerable. I will say, Emil, I think this line is spot on. In my mind, I keep getting a 30.
Seven is the number that I kind of expected this.
It's a difficult number. I can really see a 31-24 score. It keeps popping up in my head.
Sure.
And in that case, man, there's no winners and losers in this thing. But I just don't see San Francisco running away here, especially if Debo's not playing or up to snuff. Yes, the Bucks did move the football on Detroit, but so did Green Bay. And if there's something Detroit can do is run the football.
But here's where I think, and again, I think we underestimate. I did last week. You didn't. Good for you. The effect LaFleur coming off the Shanahan tree has. In other words, they know each other. And that's kind of an advantage for an underdog because, they're just trying to hang in the game, and they did. They were in the game all night. In this game, you don't necessarily have that. And I think, for whatever it's worth, I know it's an NFC championship game, and I'm not saying these guys aren't doing their best, but Detroit's got distractions. They've got both their offensive and defensive coordinator interviewing for jobs.
True.
And, I just, listen, if I knew, I wouldn't have to work. I'm just saying, it's a gut feeling. And I see how you have a gut feeling on the Lions have been gritty all year, and the back door might be opened all afternoon if they fall behind.
Yeah, I keep getting 31-24 in my head. So the number might be right on. Man, we could go 2 minutes into this game and be like, oh yeah, okay, this is going to be a runaway.
Well, listen, part of me is I'd really like to see. I mean, I'm not picking it this way, so I don't want people to think I'm picking. There's a part of me as a fan that would love to see a Ravens 49ers rematch, kind of.
I hate rematches. I hate it. It puts.
Well, you're getting one either way if the Ravens win because they played the Lions already.
Yeah, I do understand that, and that's kind of how these things have worked a lot lately. But yeah, yeah, man, I just feel like it's going to be tighter than maybe some people think, and so I'm gonna ride with Detroit. They've got a running game, and they just got some juice. The defense does worry me a little bit, but the way Purdy's been playing down the stretch here, he better be on point, because if he's not, it's going to be some serious disappointment.
Yeah, this is one of those games, I think midway through the second quarter, as far as point spread goes, I got a feeling we're either going to know one way or the other. Like, you can get a feeling as in a game.
I think in the first quarter, we're going to know what's up.
Well, yeah, I mean, if Detroit hangs around and it's 7-0 Detroit at the end of the first quarter or 7-7, I'd feel good if I were you. Conversely, if this is one where if the 49ers, I think it could be the old snowball down the hill. If they get an early
10-0, 13-0 right off rip. All right. They'll fight, but they'll get avalanched. Kind of what I said. I felt like at halftime with Houston and Baltimore. Yeah, I know in that avalanche, I could see the snow piling up right there, and you're going to get.
And Green Bay, it never felt like that. Like
no, they were good.
You thought I was trying to jinx you, and I wasn't. I just said to you midway through the game, nice pick, because I knew there was no way the 49ers were getting outside that number. Green Bay was going to be there.
They were definitely skiing the slope. So I'm on Detroit. Emil's on San Francisco. That's how we're closing things out here for championship week. We both agree that we think the Ravens are going to move forward and be in the Super Bowl. It's just going to be a hardball kind of football season here that we think that's how that's going to shake out. So, that's going to be it for us, man. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're here for the first time or haven't done it already, go ahead and subscribe to the show, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening on Anchor, Spotify, or Apple Music, or whatever you're using to stream your podcast these days. There's so many things out there. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button wherever it's located on the screen. We'd greatly appreciate that. And outside of that, man, enjoy the games this weekend. It's championship weekend. And always some fun. We're going to know who's in the Super Bowl the next
And
time.
check on your friends when they leave the house.
Oh, for God's sakes, we didn't even touch on that. But
no, we'll talk about that next.
We'll let it slide. Don't let your friends freeze to death in the backyard. If you happen to be in that part of town, it's never a good look for you in front of the judge. So anyway, for Abel Calamino, I'm Chad Wilson. Thanks for watching and listening to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. See you guys next week.